Hey, did you know that there are 21 irrefutable laws of leadership? Well, we're going to dive into one of them right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? I am your leadership coach, Glastinne, with another message that could take your leadership to the next level. Let's get in this, the law of navigation. If you do not have the book, I have it right here. This is the 21 laws, the 21 irrefutable laws by John Maxwell. Get this book. Link will be in the description waiting for you. So next time you will have this book to go over it with me. We are on page 35, the law of navigation. Anyone can steer the ship, John Maxwell says, but it takes a leader to chart the course. As we begin this first chapter, man, I'm excited about this one because this is real good. If you're new, just before I begin, if you're new, go ahead and hit that like button for me and go ahead and subscribe if you will. For my supporting cast, for my supporting leaders, hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. And comment below and let me know. I wanted to know something. Let me know why you watch these laws of leaderships that I'm putting out every week. What is it about the laws of leadership that you want to learn? And how can I best serve you in the future? Just comment below. Just leave me a comment and I'll answer them. And we'll get better as I'll get better as I bring forth this information to you. Okay, let's get in. In 1911, there were two explorers, and this first paragraph is so important, and you might miss something in it. So, if you're reading this book, make sure you read each paragraph very carefully because you might miss something. For example, let's go into this. So in 1911, there were two explorers, right? There was Scott and there were Anundsen. So there were these two explorers. Anundsen or Amundsen, he first had the ambition to, I think it was to be the first in history to go ahead and reach the South Pole. And then he had heard of someone else reaching that goal already, and he switched over to the direct opposite, to the North Pole. Why is that so important? It's so important as leaders that we understand that sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes we have to change. And in this case, someone had already reached the South Pole, so the goal wasn't compelling enough for him to go after. And it's okay as a leader if you're going to, change your mind and go for another goal. I want you to always understand that it's your prerogative to go for another goal. That's more appealing to you, that compels you, that pulls you instead of you, having to, hustle and grind for this goal and it doesn't pull you. It's like you're going after something that it's like you're really not excited about. So Amundsen, he went after this goal that he was excited about. He was excited about the South Pole, but then when he heard someone else had already gotten there before him, he was like, okay, forget it. Let's go for the North Pole. And that little piece, that little paragraph right there, I mean, just gave me volumes of value. So when you're reading John Maxwell books, make sure you read each of these paragraphs, especially the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, because every paragraph is packed with value. Now, it talks about how he carefully charted his course. It talks about this. This is what I love about this. He went to get advice, mentoring. That's why we can't do things alone as leaders. He went to get advice from the Eskimos and also other Arctic travelers that had already gone before him and traveled that sort of terrain. That way he can extract the knowledge from them to better prepare him and his team to go on this expedition. Why is that important? Because there are times as leaders, in our pursuit of whatever objective, whatever goal we may have, we don't plan. And there are times when we think we can go at it alone. Well, that's not that as a leader, you understand that we do everything in a team environment. Sure, when it's time to go make a copy or something simple, yes, we can do that alone. But when it's time to do something that's going to have major impact, always think of team, always team. And we also know that he got the idea from having dog sleds and everything from the Eskimos, and also he brought on a team of expert skiers and dog handlers. What a genius this guy was. And also the way he strategically stockpiled equipment and the food supply at certain checkpoints, making sure those checkpoints were visible even in a storm, and this guy was just so genius. He thought about everything: skiing equipment, snow equipment, for the teams, for everyone's eyes, to make sure that they're protected. I mean, Addison was a genius the way he prepared, and I just love it the way he prepared. Let's go on. Now, we have my man Robert Falcon Scott. My man Scott. Scott just messed up. Just messed the whole thing up. I mean, he had been on Arctic expeditions before, but apparently he didn't learn the lessons. So let's go on his mess ups. His first mess up was he decided to have motorized sleds and ponies. Now, we all know that in a freezing environment like that, there's a possibility that anything that's motorized can freeze. And we also know ponies are not exactly the type of animal that you want in that environment, in that freezing, bitter cold environment, right? So that was one, right? And all the ponies, they died, right? Okay, now he had his team members hauling too much equipment. Secondly, he had I guess this is third. I mean, the motors, the motorized sleds, the ponies. Then he had his team hauling too much equipment. Then not only did he have his team hauling too much equipment, they weren't dressed for the occasion. Many of them were frostbitten to the point that one of them went out and committed suicide because he didn't want to be a hindrance to his other teammates. Now, a lot of people went snowblind because they weren't wearing proper visors, low food supply and water. The depots that he had established were too far apart, not visible during certain weather conditions. And it just made everything so difficult because he didn't apparently he didn't plan this well. And I think it was just this was just a disaster. Scott's team, his leadership, and they were only following him. And this is the one thing that we have to remember as leaders. We can create a lot of havoc because everyone is following us as leaders. This is the very thing. This is a good example of when I say that if a leader cannot lead himself or herself, don't try to lead other people, because now you're messing with people's lives, because people are going to believe in you and trust you as a leader because maybe you have a position, maybe you're the one that's writing the check. Whatever the case may be, maybe you have that type of influence. Maybe you're that type of person. But whatever the situation is, if you as a leader are not well prepared and ready to chart the course, don't try to lead people into unknown territory when you haven't done your due diligence. Now, this third section, it says, if you don't live by the law of navigation, and there's another part to that. We'll get to that later. But it talks about how Scott's expedition to the pole is a classic example of a leader that couldn't navigate people. And we already discussed that. Not only did Scott not understand, and this is a very good example of a leader with no insight, of a leader with no heart. One of the things that it said here, John says here, it says that he was oblivious of what was going on amongst the team. It was like he saw it, but he didn't see it. It was like he was more delusional. And we're gonna get to that part in a few minutes. He was more delusional of what was going on, that this was a disaster from the beginning. He was more going on hope. I hope everything turns out well, without doing the work to help him and his team to navigate this terrain. And then he decided to start collecting geographical specimens. Now, that adds on to the burden that his team had to carry to make this trek, right? Now, it talks about how Lawrence Oates, former Army, you can tell, brave man, that was just like, hey, I'm not going to be the person that stops this team from acquiring its mission. I'm just out of here. I'm done. And he just went out into the snow and committed suicide. That's how bad everything was. That's how bad as a leader, we don't, as a leader within an organization, our teammates Our teammates, they don't commit suicide. What they do is they leave. They leave. They walk out. You know, there's a saying that says, um, team members don't leave good organizations. They leave bad leaders. Yeah, you as a leader, you can get that bad. I mean, you as a bad leader, you see people leaving. You're a leader in an organization, and every couple of months, people start to just leave, and they find every excuse to be like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I would love to be here, but I'm out." If that's the case, that's your leadership. That has a lot to do with your leadership. The other thing it says about this leader right here, Scott. And the thing that really disturbed me about this is that everyone on his team, including himself, died. And at the end, this is what he said. He said, "We shall die like gentlemen. I think this will show that the spirit of plunk and power to endure has not passed out of our race." Maxwell said Scott had courage, but not leadership. Yeah, a lot of courage, but no leadership. No leadership at all. This was just stupid. That's what I can call this. This is just stupid. It says followers need leaders able to effectively navigate for them when they're facing life and death situations. The necessity is painfully obvious. But even in consequences aren't so serious, the need is also great. The truth is that nearly anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. That is the law of navigation. Now, let's get into this with Jack Welch. Jack Welch said that a good leader remains focused. Controlling your direction is better than being controlled by it. Let me repeat that. A good leader remains focused. Controlling your direction is better than being controlled by it. And I think we'll all agree that Welch is right. It's better to control the situation and then being controlled by it. As we saw before with Scott, he was controlled by the situation. Adelson was controlling the situation. All right, so John gives us a framework here. He says a leader sees the whole picture. Right? They see the whole trip in their minds before they leave the dock. Right? They first start with a vision. And that's one of the things that I teach also in my courses. Every leader should start with a vision. What does this thing look like? What does this goal look like? You should be able to not only understand what that goals look like, but you should go through the motions of attaining that goal in your mind before you take a physical step. And step 2 will show you how to do that. Step 2 is understand what will it take to get there. When you're taking this journey in your imagination and you start asking yourself, what is it going to take for me to get there? When you're taking this journey, you will start having ideas of what it will take for you to get there. The other thing is, step 3 is you would need to know who are the people that you would need to help you to get there. Number 3, who are the people that you need to align yourself with or make allies with that will help you to achieve that objective. Number 4, and this is most important. This is what Scott missed all the way around. What are some of the obstacles that you may face as you head to this achievement, as you head to this goal, as you head on your journey? What are some of the obstacles? You got to ask yourself, okay, number 1, what's my vision? Has to be clear. Number 2, what is it going to take for me to get there? You know, is it what are the resources that I have? You know, can I do it physically? Do I have the mental fortitude for this? You know, number 3, who do I need on my team to get me there? And number 4, what are the obstacles? And you have to prepare for the obstacles. All right. Now, it says, the larger the organization, the more clearly the leader has to be able to see ahead. That's true because the sheer size makes mid-course corrections more difficult. And if there are errors in navigation, many more people are affected when the leader is traveling alone or with a few people. Man, isn't that true? We have to be on point, more on point when we have a lot of people that we're leading. You know, some of you guys are leading families. Some of you guys are leading yourself, right? But some of you guys are leading families. Some of you guys are leading teams at work. Some of you guys are leading teams in your entrepreneurial, your businesses. And the more people you have, the better the leader you have to come. You have to become. You have to. That's why personal development is so important for leaders. We have to continually learn and understand, especially these laws of like the law of navigation. You know, and if you're not a good navigator, find someone that's a good navigator. You know, we don't have to be all things. We have our weaknesses. Even John Maxwell explains here that he's not the best of navigators, but he understands his weaknesses. He has enough self-awareness to know that, hey, I need someone to navigate this. I'm leading a whole bunch of people. I'm not that strong in navigation. So let me get, some people on my team. Remember those 4 steps. Who do you need on your team to help you navigate? Now, this is the example that he gives us with the movie The Titanic. Remember what happened with the movie in 1997 with the Titanic? That Titanic, ran into an iceberg, and more than 1,000 people lost their lives because they could not see ahead. And by the time they did see the iceberg, physically see it, the ship was so big that they couldn't steer away from the iceberg, consequently crashing into it. Right? Now, this section, where the leader goes, this is on page 39. It starts off with it. First-rate navigators always have in mind that other people are depending on them and their ability to chart a good course. I mean, that's one of the things that we always have to understand as leaders. And I'm going to keep repeating myself because I really want this to stick. Realize that you are leading other people. Other people are following you. You can, like Scott, you can lead them. You can lead others into a destructive path. Not that you're a bad person, but you're just a bad leader. You just need more skills. You need to upgrade your leadership skills. That's all that means. It doesn't have anything to do with you personally. It's just that you have to count the cost of leadership, right? Like He gives a perfect example about these jet fighters flying in groups of four, where one fighter, when one jet go, the lead jet, wherever it flies, everyone else follows it. If he flies into a cloud, everyone else flies into that cloud. They follow. That's the reason why when you go to the air show, the formation is so, it's like music. It's like in sync. It's like, man, how do these guys do that? Because they stay in sync. It's like it's like a magnet. They're attracted to that leader, and they just following that leader blindly. Even if that leader runs into a mountain, everyone else would most likely run into that mountain. That's how in sync they are. And that is what gives us an example of how strict we have to be on our game as leaders when we're leading a bunch of people, when we're leading people, period. We have to know that people are following us, and we need to be good navigators. Now, this section, navigators draw on past experience. I like this because, there are a lot of times when, I've messed up as a leader in the past, and I just want to just say, hey, man, I just want to forget that. I want to forget that has ever happened. But that's the wrong way to think about that, because, our successes, gives us that confidence, right? That we are good leaders and we can do some things. We can get some things done. But I've learned that it was in my failures that I've learned the greatest lessons. Lessons that have really helped me to become a better leader. And if I wasn't brave enough to to just really look at those lessons, to really reflect, take the time each morning, and I do it every morning, and I take the time to reflect on things that didn't go right, things that made my team angry, things that made my team sad, things when we didn't hit our goal. I reflect on those things, because ultimately it falls on me as the leader. And I've learned my greatest lessons from those things that I was afraid to look at. So never be afraid. This section right here, navigators draw on the past. Never be afraid to look at your past. He says that your failures often teach greater lessons. They reveal wrong assumptions, character flaws, errors in judgment, and poor working methods. And I love it. I mean, if you haven't read his book, Failing Forward, you need to get that book, because I know many of us are just afraid of failing, especially when you have your first assignment as a leader. You just want to be the one that's always right. You don't want to fail, and you know what? It's not gonna work like that. You are going to fail. Matter of fact, you are going to fail miserably. People are going to talk about you. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Until you learn how to be a leader, you can read all the books you want. Until you start exercising those leadership muscles, you don't understand leadership. You don't understand leadership. And when you get into the fray and you get a couple of lumps, like they say, that's when you understand leadership. When you're in it, when you're playing the game of leadership, that's when you understand leadership. Not looking in the sidelines. But I do want you to get this book. If you don't have the book yet, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, click on the link in the description. Get it so next week we can be going through this together. All right. So one of the things that he talks about is he talks about reflective thinking. And like I say, every morning I go through reflective thinking, thinking about what I've done. I mean, because not only are you leading people in the light, and I mean that when you're at work, when you're in front of your team, but you're also leading people in the dark. When no one's watching, you're also leading people, because what's done in the dark will come to light. The type of leader that you are in the dark is the type of leader that people are going to see, respect, and be influenced by in the light. And when you're taking that time out for yourself to learn these skills and to build your skills as a leader and to reflect, that will show up in your leadership as you get in front of people. It will show up. You won't even see it, but other people will notice it. And here's some of the benefits he kind of outlined on reflective thinking. Gives you true perspective. Gives emotional integrity to your thought life. Increases your confidence in decision making. Clarifies the big picture. And takes a good experience and make it a valuable experience. And I've learned that all those things are true with reflective thinking. I mean, as a leader, you should be thinking every day. You should be thinking on paper. I mean, writing your thoughts down, journaling every day, every day. If it's good, if it's bad, whatever, you should be journaling every single day. This section says navigators examine the conditions before making commitments. Drawing on experience means looking inward. I like this. Examining conditions means looking outward. No good leader plans a course of action without paying close attention to current conditions. Man, isn't that true? I mean, no good leader ever goes out into battle without understanding the conditions, the current conditions, whether it's going to rain, whether there's a hurricane coming, whether there's certain ditches in the land that they need to know about. If it's their mines, IEDs, whatever. I mean, just understanding the current condition, just understanding the lay of the land. We as leaders, we have to evaluate that. We don't just go. We don't just be like, oh no, yes, we can do this. We can take the island. No. That's not the way you do it. You have to understand the current conditions. Whether the boats are prepared to take you to the island, whether the sea is going to be calm enough for you to get to the island, whether the men are ready physically and mentally to get there with you. I mean, we have to be prepared to understand current conditions. Love it. The next section is navigators listen to what other people have to say. No matter how much you learn from the past, it will never tell you all that you need to know for the present. No matter how good a leader you are, you yourself will not have all the answers. Man, isn't that true? Isn't that true that as new leaders sometimes, and I'm not talking to you vets out there. You vets already know this. You guys have been in the game for a minute. You already know this, but our new leaders need our help. New leaders think they should have all the answers. No, that is a myth. You do not have to have all the answers. Okay, Glastinne, if I don't have the answers, what do? You find mentors. You find people that are good leaders, people that you admire in your church, in your organization, in your youth group, where you volunteer at, wherever you can, on the podcasts, YouTube videos, or whatever, wherever you can find a mentor. And you can have, and I say YouTube videos, podcasts, because you can have virtual mentors. And you can write these people and get some answers from them, get some feedback at least. At least if you write me, you'll get some feedback from me. It talks about how Addison, Expedition to the South Pole, he had learned from a group of Native Americans in Canada about warm clothing and Arctic survival techniques. Those skills and practices meant the difference between failure and success for his team. Good leader, always. You always gonna be asking questions. You always put yourself as the student, because that's how you shine. You shine with a team around you. You try to go at it alone, it is not going to work. Navigating leaders get their ideas from many sources, as we said. They listen to members of the leadership team. One, he's giving you a framework here. They listen to members of the leadership team. They talk to people in their organization to find out what's happening at the grassroots level. And number three, they spend time with other leaders outside of the organization. Number three. Study that framework right there. Listening to team members, find out the lay of the land at a grassroots level, and talking to people outside of the organization. Number three. Use this framework whenever you're going into a new journey or trying to attain a new goal, working on attaining a new goal. Use this framework. It will help you again and again and again and again, because it helped me, and I use this framework. And John gives a great example of how he uses this framework to accomplish a multi-million-dollar deal at his second church. In a few minutes, we're gonna start discussing that. But let's go to this section. Navigators make sure that their conclusion represents both faith and fact. I cannot tell you how many leaders get caught up in this. Faith and fact. I'm sure Scott had faith that he was going to make it. He had faith so much that he totally was oblivious to the facts. Facts. Ponies were dying. Fact. Right? Motors were freezing up. Fact. Men started dying. Fact. That right there should have told you, hey, we need to turn back. This is a wash. We need to reset, regroup, and come back next year. But he had this blind faith where he didn't see he didn't even everything. He just disregarded everything. It was like, hey, you know what? We're going to make it. We're going to fight. We're going to hustle. And we're going to get to our destination. He did get to his destination. With half his crew dead. And he killed the other half going back. we have, as leaders, we have to balance between the faith and the facts. It says that John says that it says that you also have to be able to see the facts realistically. You can't minimize obstacles or rationalize your challenges and still lead effectively. One of the things as leaders that we have to understand is that when that circumstances are not, we don't view circumstances as permanent. I mean, we view circumstances, especially if it's a negative circumstance, we view it as something that is temporary, because we're going to find a solution. But we don't ignore the circumstances. We acknowledge that the motors are freezing up, the ponies has died. We acknowledge that. And because we acknowledge that, we can foresee that, hey, you know what? We don't have the right type of clothing for this weather. You know what? My men can get frostbitten in this type of weather, because if the ponies are dying, we can foresee things because we acknowledge realistically what's going on. And this is what this is talking about. We need to be very realistic. Jim Collins, if you haven't read the book Good to Great, that's another good book to get. I'll put the link in the description for you. It is a phenomenal book. Get it. I don't care how old it is or how old you think it is. It is a phenomenal book. Get it. Get it. It will teach you a lot, especially about the levels of leadership that John Maxwell talks about a lot also. Jim Collins says this. He says, you must retain faith that you will prevail in the end, and must also confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. That's a wrap in that section, because there's nothing more to be said. That's a wrap. Now, our next section says a lesson in navigation. Now, we talked about this just a few moments ago when John Maxwell had his second experience as a new pastor in 1975, where he had grown the congregation from 400 to 1,000 members. And in order to keep growing, he thought it was a good idea to that a new auditorium had to be built, but this was a multi-million-dollar exhibition, and he had to get the buy-in of the congregation, who were already frustrated because of another project that was on the table before his. And it was just exciting to me to see how he kind of navigated his way through this. And because when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at how can I use, the same navigational processes and systems that he used to influence my team or influence my leadership to get something that I think that will benefit, the team and organization as well. And he already let's get into this. He already admitted that, the bad news was that that the good news was he already had experience in this, kind of construction project. But the bad news is that the first project was was not a multi-million-dollar project. So this was a huge deal for him, right? So one of the things that he started first in charting this section is called charting the course with a navigation strategy. You know, he freely admits that navigating is not his strong point, and that he names a couple of stronger leaders that are good at navigation. But back in 1975, he had to do the navigating. And the way he did it, he outlined this strategy. It was called Plan Ahead, right? If you're listening to this on the replay, go ahead and put hashtag Plan Ahead. Hashtag Plan Ahead in the comments section for me, please, because I want to know. And if you're still with me on this, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. And that notification bell. Plan Ahead is an acronym for Predetermine a course of action. That's P. L is for lay out your goal. Lay out your plan. A is for adjust your priorities. N is for notify key personnel. N is for notify key personnel. A is for allow time for acceptance. H is for head into action. E, expect problems. A, always point to the successes. And D, daily review your plan. I love that. I use it myself. I'm always looking at the law of navigation from this chapter in this book, because I'm always trying to follow this strategy, because it's just sound. It's just sound. It may sound simple. John Maxwell has a very unique way of making things sound simple, but when they're not easy, especially if you're new to the game. So follow this process. Whenever you have a big thing, a big project, follow this project. It's this process, especially if you're not getting buy-in from leadership, if you're not getting buy-in from your family. And this is how I'm going to show you in his example how he put this process as he applied this process to get his to achieve his goal. Watch this. He said that I had a strong sense of what course of action needed to be. If we were going to keep growing, we needed to build a new auditorium. I had looked at every possible alternative and knew that it was the only viable solution. My goal was to design and build a facility, pay for it in 10 years, and unify all the people in the process. No small feat. Predetermine the course of action, right? That's clear to us. Now, he understood that the congregation had to come to a decision for this, else it would never pass. So what he started to do, on a monthly basis have meetings with the congregation. Why was he doing that? He was giving the congregation an opportunity to get to know him, right? He was giving the congregation, he was giving himself the opportunity to build relationships with key members of the congregation, influence of a congregation. That's why he was setting up those meetings. Um, um, for bringing the congregation together. Just like you're set up meetings to get to know your team on the individual and group basis. Now, the other thing that he did was he needed to understand who were the key influencers. Because in getting to know people, you try to single out those leaders that are the key influencers in the group. Because there are times when you don't have that influence. You're new to the game. You're the new kid on the block. You don't have that influence. So he met with those key influencers, gave them the vision, or like some people like to say, cast the vision, and kind of built the relationship with them also. He went further. He did some financial analysis on the cost of this project, because everything had to be clear, and he had to give projections on the next 10 years of what type of financial position that they will be in the next 10 years, and on the past, where they were and where they were going financially. So that had to be laid out, right? That's part of laying out your goal, right? Now he had to formulate a 10-year budget to explain how financing was going to be handled. And then he had to put all this information in a 20-page playbook. That's going to be very important. These steps are going to be very important in a few minutes. Now, after finding out who were the key leaders, he had to get all the members, all those key leaders together. He had to, run down the plan to them, and as he was doing this, if he would receive any pushback from any leader, he would privately meet one-on-one with that particular leader until he got that leader's buy-in. Very important. Very important. One of the things that I always say, leadership is relationships. You influence people that you have relationships with, and people are open to be influenced when they know you and when they trust you. All right? Never forget that. And he says, and then I allow time for those key leaders to influence the rest of the people and help them accept the coming changes. That was genius to me. You gotta let the soup cook. You gotta let the stew boil. I mean, he allowed time for the key leaders to spread his message for them. They were like, that was like his marketing tactic, his advertising. He got everyone, he got the key leaders, not everyone, but he got the key leaders, the key influencers to go out and spread the word for him while he sits back and watch and see what happens. And I'm speaking hypothetically, right? That he's just sitting back. He was working in the background. So if anybody watching this, John Maxwell, he was working in the background. And it was just a genius plan. I just loved the way he just formulated all this plan, and he was going by the strategies that we earlier discussed. Plan ahead, right? And he goes on to say that he expected opposition, but he only got 2 questions right. And one of the questions were, where the bathrooms and the water fountains, where would they be located? You know, so, and I mean, he did it. He got the money for the project, and he did that because he understood and valued the law of navigation. He says that I found out the secret of the law of navigation is preparation. And this is what I want to bring home to you. That the secret of the law of navigation is preparation. When you prepare well, you convey confidence and trust to the people. Lack of preparation has the opposite effect. I really want to stress to you how important these laws are. If you are a leader and you're in this journey with me of learning as much as you can about leadership, go ahead and click on that that video right there, and I'll meet you on the other side to talk more about these laws and walk you through, because you cannot be a leader without these fundamental laws, without understanding these fundamental laws. I'm not saying that you have to read the John Maxwell book or you have to be a fan of John Maxwell. I'm not saying that at all. But one way or another, you will run into these different principles. John Maxwell is calling them laws because he found that these were, and it took him years to write this book. He found that these were the immutable laws that just no leader could be without. No leader could neglect and still be successful. So there was a lot of thought put in these laws. And right now, the law, what we're studying right now, the law of navigation, the secret to the law of navigation is preparation. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was my pleasure to bring it to you. If you're still with me right now, go ahead and comment below your favorite part of this video. What were some aha moments that you had on this video? And I thank you for watching. If you hadn't already, click on that like button for me. And if you're new, click on that subscribe button for me. It helps me to continue making these videos. I enjoy my time here with you guys. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm out of here. Peace.